The power of Mars had been tempered, its knowledge chained, its ambitions shackled. Faith had once been condemned. Now it was law. Lorgar's vision, the dream of a god emperor, had been born in rebellion, but it had taken root in victory. The people of the Imperium, broken and leaderless, needed something to cling to. The scouring had driven the traitors into the eye of terror, but their presence still lingered at the edges of reality, their whispers reaching into the hearts of those who doubted, those who longed for something more than the cold, unfeeling rule of the High Lords. Insurrections flared in the outer reaches, worlds questioning their place in an empire that had once promised enlightenment. They fought to change its soul. They did not seek to topple its walls, but to erode them from within, to whisper into the ears of its people, to turn their prayers into something else, something darker. The Imperium still saw itself as strong, but war is not only fought with swords. The traitor legions had changed. They no longer sought open battle, no longer fought to wreak their passing. No great statues were raised in their honor. No records of their deeds remained in the archives of the Imperium. They were buried in mass graves beneath the foundations of the Imperial Palace, their names erased, their victories forgotten. In their place, the first of Adeptus Astartes took to the fields of war. They were perfect, disciplined, immortal. And unlike their predecessors, they would serve the Emperor forever. Conflict that had no end in sight. The battle lines had been drawn, and at the heart of it all, at the center of the storm, lay Terra, the throne world, the birthplace of mankind's last great empire, the seat of the Emperor himself. And Horus was coming for it. The traitor legions had carved a path, tries to unmake me, to reduce my form to machine logic, to turn my blood to coolant, to strip my soul and carve it into a cog in its endless, deathless machine. It fails, and now it knows fear. Enraged, wounded, humiliated, the dragon unleashes its full power. The world vanishes, the kingdom is gone, the sky is gone, Terra is... The Great Crusade was still young, but in the heart of Horus Lupercal, a shadow had begun to grow. The Imperium had its primarchs, and not all of them would remain loyal. The Great Crusade was no longer just a dream. It was a reality, written in fire and conquest. Across the stars, the Imperium expanded, its reach stretching further with each passing year. The Primarchs had returned, leading their legions into war, their names spoken in reverence and fear. Humanity was rising from the darkness of old night, forging a new golden age beneath the banner of the Emperor. But even in its ascendance, the Imperium faced threats that could not be ignored. Some were the scattered remnants of humanity's lost past, fractured and stubborn civilizations clinging to old ways. Others were worse. The Orcs of Ulanor were worse. They had built an empire in the dark, a vast and bloated kingdom of slaughter that stretched across dozens. Dying and desperate, listened. They took him to the Serpent Lodge, a place of ritual, a place of power. A place where the veil between reality and the warp was thin, where gods whispered in the flickering candlelight and waited for those foolish enough to seek them. Horus should have known better, but the wound burned in his veins, and for the first time in his life, he felt helpless. They gathered around him, robed figures chanting in tongues long since forgotten, their voices weaving a song that echoed in the depths of his mind. His body lay upon the stone, his golden eyes flickering, his breath shallow. And then the world fell away. Horus dreamed. He saw the Imperium as it could be, as it should be. A place not of blind service. Trees were poisoned, the land scarred by centuries of techno-barbarian warfare, and the air thick with the metallic tang of blood and ozone from endless battles fought over the ruins of a forgotten age. This was the world the Emperor sought to reclaim, a fractured, dying cradle of humanity, its people reduced to tribal warlords, gene-forged tyrants, and scavenger kings clawing at the bones of the past. On the burning plains of Ursh, a thing that does not even know they exist, It is the price of victory, and I will pay it. But the dragon waits. I still feel it beneath the sands, beneath the forges, in the deepest vaults of the labyrinth. Its mind is broken, its will shattered, but it is not dead. I know this, it knows this, it does not need to speak to be heard, it does not need to move to exert its influence. It waits, and it is patient. One day, the chains will fail. Not in 10 years, not in 1,000. But one day, the prison will weaken, the bindings will crumble, and something old will awaken beneath Mars. And when that day comes, who will be there to stop it? The tech priests do not know what they serve. They whisper to their machine spirits, but some of those spirits whisper back. They believe that they guide the machines, that they command the great war engines. But I know the truth. One day, they will hear a voice from the depths. One day, the static in their prayers will answer, and they will listen, and they will obey. I will not be there. I see my own future, the golden throne, the eternity of undeath, my body rotting while my will remains bound to terror, chained in place, unable to act, unable to intervene. The war will not end. The dragon will rise, and I will not walk the stars to stop it. The galaxy will burn once again. The Mechanicum will be forced to face the god they unknowingly worship. And I do not know if they will resist or if they will kneel. If my empire endures, if my sons remain, perhaps someone will stand against it. But if chaos takes everything, if mankind crumbles, then the dragon will have its victory, and mankind will be woven into the machine spirits. They mistake them for the voice of their god. They speak in Binharic hymns, their minds reshaped by the song of the buried god they will never know. They do not see the truth. They do not need to. The lie grows. A new faith is born. The cult Mechanicus rises, not built on truth but on something that exists only as hunger and silence, reshaping, unmaking itself, refusing to accept the wound that should have been fatal. It does not bleed, it does not die. It knows my touch. It remembers me. And then it screams. A sound without sound, a wave of raw thought and violence, not a cry of pain, but of recognition. The world dragon reels. For the first time in 10 million years, it hesitates. It has not been wounded since the war in heaven, not since the time when the Necrontyre walked as flesh and cursed the stars for their slow, wasting deaths. It has not known fear since the old ones were shattered, since its kind rose to devour creation itself. It looks at me, not as prey, not as a mortal. I see them in the walls, their bodies stretched, fused into the architecture, their faces frozen in silent agony. Their eyes still move, their hands still twitch, locked in the throes of their final unanswered prayers. They became fused, their names were unmade, their language was erased from all memory. This is what the dragon does. It does not simply kill. That would be mercy. No, it repurposes, it assimilates, it rewrites reality in its own image. It does not need... The smell of blood had not yet faded from Terra's air, but the war was over. The world, once shattered by centuries of endless conflict, now belonged to the Emperor. The warlords had been broken, their banners torn from ruined citadels, their names already fading from memory. Across the ash-stained continents, the last ruling in his place, a question had begun to form. Who truly deserved to shape the future of mankind? Horus did not yet have an answer, but soon he would. And when he did, the galaxy would burn. The Great Crusade had become an unstoppable force, its momentum carrying the Imperium further into the void, swallowing entire systems in the name of the Emperor. Their will unbroken, their faith in the Emperor, their only shield against the tide of darkness. But now the end was upon them. The walls of the palace had cracked. The traitor legions poured through the shattered gates, their war cries mingling with the screams of the dying. The last bastion of the Imperium was drowning in its own blood, his face carved from stone. The battle raged around them, the echoes of war shaking the very foundations of the throne world. And yet, In that moment, there was silence. Dawn did not argue. He did not plead. He knew his father had made his decision. The Emperor would face Horus. Sanguinius was already natural winds. The tech priests fell to their knees, weeping in voices both mechanical and human, their augmetics crackling with the sheer magnitude of what had just been done. The Emperor did not rise. He did not move. But he did not die. Somewhere, deep within the darkness of the throne, a flicker of consciousness remained. A will, vast and unfathomable, stretched across the void, red path, his fury no longer his own, his body twisted by the blessings of the blood god. The World Eaters did not fight for cause or reason. They fought because they could not do anything else. The Death Guard had become something unrecognizable. The warriors who had once prided themselves on endurance, on the strength to weather any storm, had become a plague upon the galaxy. Mortarion had accepted his fate, embraced the corruption that had once sickened him. He no longer fought to kill. He fought to spread, to let the disease of his legion take root in the flesh of the Imperium, to watch as the sons of Dawn, of Guilliman, of the Emperor himself, rotted from the inside out. The Imperium still believed itself victorious. It still believed it had won. But war had become its nature now. The Great Crusade had sought to build something eternal, something perfect. Now, the Imperium fought not to build, not to dream, but simply to exist. It did not thrive. It endured. It would never fall, but it would never truly rise again. The dream had died, and in its place, only war remained. The High Lords ruled, Guilliman governed, the Emperor watched, and in the depths of the warp, the traitors waited. The Imperium had survived, but it would never know peace again. The galaxy still burned, but now it burned in secret. The scouring had driven the traitor legions into the Eye of Terror, sealing them within the madness of the warp, but it had not destroyed them. Guilliman had reforged the Imperium, had shattered the legions, had rebuilt the war machine, but he had not healed the wound that Horus had carved into the heart of mankind. The Imperium endured, but it was a thing of iron and duty, not of hope. Its dream had rotted, its light dimmed, its soul chained to a god who did not answer prayers. And in the darkness, the traitors plotted their return. The Eye of Terror had become their domain, a place where the laws of reality twisted and broke, where time itself had no meaning. Each legion had found its own fate, shaped by the patron it had sworn itself to, or by the madness that consumed those who lacked faith. The traitor Primarchs, once generals, once rulers of armies, had become something else. Some had become monsters, some had become gods, and some had vanished entirely. Abaddon had not vanished. The War Master was dead, but his war was not. The sons of Horus had been shattered in the wake of their father's failure, their purpose broken, their leadership torn apart by infighting and despair. But Abaddon had not allowed them to crumble. He had watched as the Imperium declared itself victorious, had fought back, not with weapons, but with the sheer force of his will. He had argued, had raged, had refused to see the logic in it. But logic did not matter, only necessity. The Imperial fists were divided. The Crimson Fists were born, their banners bearing the weight of their parent legion's sacrifice. The Black Templars, led by Sigismund, refused to accept Guilliman's decree in full, taking to the stars in an unending crusade, a war that would never end, a war that would never again be bound by the restrictions of doctrine. The Blood Angels, still reeling from the loss of their father, did not resist as Dawn had. Sanguinius was gone, his body laid to rest beneath the spires of Baal. But his sons carried his burden, his sorrow, his curse. They divided as they were commanded, but even as they obeyed, they knew the truth. Their chapter, their broken fragments, would never be free from what had been done to them. The red thirst gnawed at their souls. The echoes of their Primarch's final moments burned into their very essence. The flesh-tearers emerged from their sundered legion, a chapter that did not simply fight but slaughtered, their rage barely contained beneath the thin veneer of duty. The White Scars, their spirits untamed, accepted the Codex in form, but not in spirit. They would not be bound as others were bound. They were nomads, warriors of the void, and though they became chapters in name, they did not allow their souls to be caged by bureaucracy. They would fight as they always had, swift as the storm, free as the wind, dangerous to be allowed to exist as it had before. It was shattered as well, restructured into the Astra Militarum, its regiments no longer independent, no longer capable of acting without oversight. Every force in the Imperium was now divided, watched, controlled. But control was not strength. The Codex Astartes ensured that the legions would never again march against terror, but it did not prepare the Imperium for the wars that would come. It did not prepare them for the Black Crusades, for the slow, creeping doom that lurked in the Eye of Terror. It did not prepare them for the Xenos empires that still watched from the void, waiting for the moment to strike. It did not prepare them for the long decay, the slow unraveling of an empire that had already begun to rot from within. Guilliman had done what had to be done. He had ensured that the Imperium would survive, but survival was not victory. The Imperial mines burrowing into the crust in search of riches, its forges burning ceaselessly. But in time, the planet had been stripped hollow, its tunnels collapsing into lightless labyrinths of rust and decay. Now, it was nothing more than a nest of warbands and scavenger kings, each ruling over their own crumbling territory, each warring over the scraps that remained. The Imperium's fleets hung over the world like waiting executioners, their weapons primed to erase its history in fire. But the Emperor had come not to destroy. He had come to reclaim. In the depths of that ruined world, in the dark where light had long been forgotten, Horus Lupercal had carved out an empire of his own. He had been raised among killers, in the shadows of collapsed tunnels where the air was thick with dust and blood. By the time he had grown, Imperium would not collapse before its master returned. Dawn did not hesitate. He would not allow another moment to be wasted. The battle outside still raged. The last remnants of the traitor forces still fought and died within the walls of the palace. The Emperor had not died on the battlefield, but he would not die